Welcome to your Wednesday Wisdom 30-minute power session where we're going to be handling emotional triggers. I'm so excited that you are here and I can't wait to answer your questions. So for those of you who are just joining, welcome. We are live. So Wednesday Wisdom is back, lovelies. A bunch of you sending questions, which I have, and I will be answering. Yes, thank you for all the hearts. I appreciate all the love. I got back super late last night and my plane was delayed, but we're here. Yeah. I was on a family vacation in California. So welcome. Emotional triggers, that's what we're talking about this week. So before I get into, well, hi everyone who's saying hello. Hey Mare, hey Lisa, hi Noelle. Hello, welcome. A lot of the Wednesday Wisdoms, not all, but a lot, at least this one, are going to be based on the content of what was happening in the blog that week. So this week, Monday, today's Wednesday, we released a blog about emotional triggers and how empowering it is, hey cat, to understand what it is, what happens, why do we get triggered by things. So I'll start with kind of like a working definition of what does it mean to be triggered. Right? What does that actually mean? I actually shared an example today. Hey, Dory. Hey, Jenny Lee. An example today on social media about my own experience where after my father died suddenly when I was in my early 30s. And I, 6-8 months later, I was having this response to this. I would listen to music while I was working out, and a particular song would inspire this like very, very emotional response where I couldn't contain myself. I couldn't not bawl my face off. You know what I mean? It like got a hold of me, which is not the same feeling of when you're like, oh, I feel sad. No, that's, we all know when we feel sad, we're aware of these conscious emotions. We're like, oh, that was sad. Now I feel sad. This was different. This was feeling like you're run over by a bus, basically, emotionally, where it's like, it feels like it's out of the blue. So anyway, I say to my therapist, hey, I think something's mentally wrong with me because I hear certain songs and I can't stop crying my eyes out, like hysterically crying, like I have to get off the treadmill or the elliptical or whatever I'm doing. And she said, well, be specific. What songs or what are you talking about? And I said, well, there's this particular song by the Dixie Chicks. She said, what's it about? It was the song Traveling Soldier, if any of you are aware of this. And it's this terribly sad story about a young kid who goes off to war, has nobody at home, nobody to write to, nobody gives a shit about him, and then he dies. So he kind of makes this alliance with this waitress before he leaves. It's just, the whole thing was just so friggin' sad, but not so sad that I should be hysterically crying and running into the bathroom at the gym. You guys understand what I'm saying about being triggered? And she was like, do you think that senseless early death of the person in the song could have a relation to your father dying so young? And I was like, oh, yeah, definitely. And when she said it, I was like, oh, and I felt the connection. I started crying and crying and crying. So I was like, okay, well, this is what it is. But that's what I'm talking about. With some triggers, they're sneaky, where there really isn't an obvious connection. And part of it is that if we're not used to being triggered, right? If we don't understand, we try to make sense of it. We're like, no, it's just really sad, or maybe I'm just PMSing or whatever. But the more intimate you become with your own triggers, the more you're going to see that when you're emotionally triggered from either old material or from unresolved painful things from the past, right? That's so much of what we're talking about. Hi, everybody who's joining, people from Portugal, Italy, everyone. Hi, welcome. I'm so glad you're here. Well, hello. All the Instagram people, we got all the Facebook people, we got all the many people. Anyway, what I want to teach you today a little bit is what to do when you're triggered, but also how to identify what it is, right? So what was being triggered in me was this unresolved grief. I didn't expect the grief to be resolved. It was only 7 or 8 months after my father died suddenly of a heart attack at 61. He wasn't sick or anything. So that shit takes a minute to process. You're like, wait, everything has changed. You were here, and I had my whole world organized around that fact. And that's not to say whether I did not have a very involved father, but it doesn't matter, because my internal experience was basically organized around the world being, my father is alive and my mother is alive. Whether they're together or not, they weren't. They were divorced when I was 13. It didn't matter. Suddenly, there is the homeostasis, or the balance in my internal life, the way I see and experience the world, was now just gone. Right. Hey, Scott, how you doing? You know what I mean? So my point is, when we're triggered emotionally, this is not to say like these are terrible things or something's wrong with us. What I want to inspire you to do in this 30-minute power session on emotional triggers is for you to become curious about what yours are, right? Become curious about why you respond a particular way to whatever it may be, because there are ways you can learn how to find the original injury or what it is that's going on, right? Someone said, hi, so good, I need this. Great. I'm so happy to be providing it. You be. I need it too, apparently. We all do. So if you can become more adept at saying, wow, I understand this feeling. Part of a trigger can be that you're having an extreme response, something that if you really looked at it, you'd be like, wow, really that I'm bawling my face off because of this sad song. I obviously knew something else was going on, but I was young and I wasn't, I was only a therapist for like 1 second at that point. So, even though I'd had a lot of therapy, I didn't have the skills I'm like an amazing GPS now to help you find your unresolved material or your stuff, but I wasn't then for myself, right? Because I was still young. Not that I'm not young now, I'm young at heart. Anyway, you get the point. Sometimes it's unresolved injuries that really need our attention, like unresolved traumatic things. Sometimes it's what I was experiencing, like grief, working its way through. Because grief has a whole process that you got to go through. It isn't just like someone passes away, whether we liked them, didn't like them, had a great relationship with them, had no relationship with them. Right? It isn't about the quality of the relationship. It's about what does it mean to your internal experience, having that person no longer walking on planet Earth with us, whether you were estranged from them. Sometimes that's the hardest types of things to grieve, because there can be a lot of regret in those things as well, in a different way than if you didn't have regrets, right? So it can be that, and it can also be you're having a transference. So triggers and transferences, meaning you are responding to a situation right now in your current life that is similar to something that's happened in the past that was painful, something you witnessed. And you may not realize that you're having a transference. So this is why I came up with the 3 Qs, which I'll tell you about, and those of you who know my work know it. Oh, hi, Lise. How are you, honey? Hi, Deanna. Hi, Forrest. Hi, Marcella. Oh, so many people. Well, welcome. You guys put it in your calendar. We're going to be doing Wednesday Wisdom through the middle of September. So I'm back for X number of weeks. Right on. All right. So let's talk a little bit about the things that you can do and how to sort of figure it out. You can simply think about what are the things that create a real emotional response that make you feel bad or is out of line or out of proportion to what has gone on. And these can be things that you may not even need to change or feel compelled to change, right? I didn't have the relationship I wanted with my father growing up because he was pretty emotionally distant. So even now, when I see a movie or when I see people like a dad and a daughter, I'm all like, like it moves me in a way, but I don't have a freak out about it, right? I don't lose my mind. I'm not bawling my face off. I just go, oh, there's a tenderness to that experience and I've healed so much of that, and getting to watch, be a parent myself, and then watch, have granddaughters, and then watch Vic and our sons have daughters, there's a lot of emotional healing experiences that we are lucky enough to get to experience in this life. So a lot of those things will be healing kind of on their own, but I'll always have a tenderness towards that. I don't consider that a trigger, right? I just consider that this is how I'm wired because of my life experience, and it doesn't cause me distress. So this is another thing. If your emotional response causes you distress, that is something that needs your attention, because we don't want to be in distress, right? That is painful, and it takes a shit ton of energy on a daily basis to be in some kind of distress, you know? So moving into, you can look though, I could have said even before this, that when I saw dads and daughters, that was something that before, while my father was alive, I had a bit of a trigger about it, you know, not crazy, but a bit. So you know yours. Think about the things. Are you very jealous? Is it something that when you see inequity in life, like, are you someone who's really into things being fair? When you see unfairness, does it make you crazy? There's a reason that you are that way, right? Just like there is a reason that I am this way. So that's the first thing. Look, we're looking for a pattern in our own experiences, right? A common thread in situations or circumstances that trigger you to kind of a hot emotion. Do they make you very upset, make you want to cry, or do they make you very mad? Those are things that we want to look at, and you know what they are. So what is a trigger, right? Some of them can be this hot emotional response. And what I ask you to do is, when that happens, we've got to step back. We've got to take an inquiry. And I created the 3 Qs tool, we call it, right? Which is the 3 questions that you can ask yourself anytime, any place, to try to understand why you are responding the way you are in a situation, if you feel like it might be a little bit too hot for what's happening. If you're like, this is like a little much for what actually went on, that is when you want to ask the 3 Qs. So what are they? Where have I felt like, who does this person remind me of? Is the first one. Where have I felt like this before? And why is this dynamic familiar to me? Right? Those are the 3. We also add a question or sort of a scenario setup at the end of those 3, which is to say, when I'm in this situation and I'm having this experience with this person, who do they become and who do I become? Because you might become your parent and they might become the 10-year-old you, or you might become the 10-year-old you and your authoritarian boss might become the parent, right? So this is, and I've written pretty extensively about this, you guys, and someone from my team will just add those questions here. I think many of you, especially if you are a woman and you are in the Real Love Revolution Facebook group, I think you are quite familiar with this, unless you're new to the group. And you can always look for posts where I've written about this. But this is something that we're looking for, this historical, potentially charged material that needs our attention. And that's what the 3 Qs can provide, is an understanding of like, oh, I'm afraid of my boss, even though I'm 28, because he reminds me so much of my father, who was scary and the same thing, didn't talk or whatever. So how does it help you to ask the 3 Qs? Well, you can identify the original injury. You can start to go, oh, I get it. This is what's happening. I'm responding to my boss, who I think is mean and cold, like I thought my father was, because the 10-year-old in me is afraid of him. I get it. And how does that help you? Well, it helps you because then you can reassure yourself, well, I'm not 10. My boss is not my father, right? So I can go on and be my grown-up self. It's almost like we get triggered into this childhood experience and we can move it into, and that's just one way of being triggered. It's not the only way, right? Loss, a breakup, a divorce, financial ruin. There's all these things that happen to us where it's traumatic, right? And so what happens? Something happens and our fear mind is like, oh my God, this is just like that other thing. I need to do something, right? But instead of doing something productive, like raising our awareness, what we might do is overreact in the moment to the person. We might, like I did, cry hysterically and run off the treadmill to go into the bathroom. Like, those things are not as productive as getting curious about, what is this complex emotional processy that is going on right now that I want to understand? Because really, think about it. My idea, I propose, I believe that the most empowering thing that you can do in your life is becoming an expert on you. So I'm happy that you're here. So I see you all, and I love that you're here with me right now. And I'm happy as hell if I can be a catalyst for you to find your answers. I am positive I do not know or have your answers, but I'm a damn good GPS to get you there, right? That's my only job, is to help you find where within yourself that information lives. So I'm always like, nobody, as Danielle Laporte, my girlfriend, would say, right? Be your own guru, right? Nobody can be your guru, because you are the only person who can ever become the actual expert on you. There's no one size fits all. That's one thing I know for sure, being a psychotherapist, is that there's no one size fits all. We're all so very different. So the other ideas that I have for you, and then I'm going to take the questions that came in. I'm going to hit whatever questions I got in the sidebars if I got time. So, and the third thing I want you to do is think about cultivating present moment consciousness, right? Present moment awareness. How do we do that? Through mindful breathing, through meditation, through doing body scans, like creating some internal expansion. Because the only way that you'll ever catch these triggers and turn them into something better, like actual information, like actual data about you, so that you can make informed decisions, is we must catch them. So it doesn't mean that we can't catch them a little bit after the fact. That happens all the time when we're in a learning curve. We're in the place that I call the in-between, where you can't use the old shit because it doesn't work and you don't know the new shit yet. So you're just like, great, thanks. I have no defense mechanisms because you took them away. And my new one isn't, I don't know it yet. But we're all in the in-between. This is a part of being in transition. And this is a part of transformation. It requires us to be in the not knowing. But just know that not knowing exactly what to do is a hell of a lot better than continuing to do the old shit that does not get you the results you want. Anybody? Can I get an amen? Do we agree that better to do something new, even if you're like, I think I'm doing it badly? Do something new. Learn, All right, moving on. A really important moment to take a pause. Take that moment to take a pause. Again, this does require some present moment consciousness, though. It actually does. You have to be self-aware enough, not paranoid, right? Not painfully self-aware, just self-aware enough that if this tsunami of emotion is coming to you, that you're like, okay, this is my cue to not say anything messed up to this person I'm talking to not blame them, to not haul off and punch someone. I mean, listen, with me, I don't think I could have stopped those tears, even if I knew it was happening, but at least I would have not gotten I wouldn't have intentionally listened to that effing song while I was working out, right? I would have taken a different action, which would have given me the space to process the emotion that I was feeling. So taking a pause, take 5 deep breaths, super simple, not hard to do, totally free. Just do it. We can take 5 deep breaths right now. Do it while I'm yakking. Doesn't that feel better? And the last thing I thought about was using an affirmation. And I'm not much of an affirmation person, right? I don't think affirmations hold some magical shit. I really don't. And I think that sometimes the reason I've stayed away from it in my work and in my public facing work especially is because it seems like magical thinking. Like I'm just going to say everything's great. And no. So I'm not talking about hyper positivity or psychological or emotional bypassing at all. But I am talking about the fact that what we say to ourselves matters. Our internal dialogue actually matters. So in that moment, think of, even if you're just saying, everything is really okay. I'm safe right now. I mean, as long as you are, right? Or it's okay to feel your feelings. You don't have to make yourself wrong, but sometimes it's good to just have something like, you know what? You're okay. And I mean, I say stuff like that to myself all the time if I'm feeling worried. And again, I wrote about triggers, but you'll see in the work that I do, if you look up the word trigger and me, you won't see much, because I feel like it's overused in the popular public vernacular. Like this language, it's become some kind of catchphrase. And from a psychological point of view, like I don't love it, because I feel like people who are saying it don't even know what it means. So I'm hoping that this conversation, this Wednesday wisdom, this 30-minute little power session, and me doing a video, giving you a cheat sheet, all of the stuff that I was trying to do will give you more information, so that it's not used sort of as a punchline or an excuse. It's actually something that you can decode with the good, hopefully, the little GPS that I'm providing for you. I hope so. That is my wish for you. Yeah, so someone asked a good question. I'm moving into the questions right now, so I'm just going to hit Karen's. What does it mean that when at times I'm triggered, I start shaking, heartbeats really hard, and I can't breathe? That is really having a traumatic response to something. So you can be triggered, and even when I was crying, I wasn't necessarily having that response, because that to me sounds like a trauma response, meaning that there's old material that's still charged or frozen. So old traumatic or dramatic material from the past that's still charged, because that is most definitely a physiological traumatic response. Now, when I was crying, when I had my response, I was certainly feeling something, but I couldn't not breathe, right? I could breathe. So that to me sounds like a traumatic response, which means that there's something to look for. Are there traumatic experiences from your past that have not been unpacked and resolved in a professional setting? That would be my 2 cents on that. Dory, hello. I'm aware of a current person situation that triggers me repeatedly. Is my only option to remove myself from the triggering dynamic? And that was a great question. And here's my 2 cents about it, which is that if there's someone who you interact with on a regular basis and they trigger you regularly, I don't think that that's an old trigger. Maybe that's more like you just don't like being around them, right? Maybe the person actually just pisses you off in real time, in real life. Being triggered to anger when someone is doing something that makes you angry is not the kind of triggering that I'm talking about here. I'm talking about being triggered in a way that you have an emotion that you go, what the fuck was that? Like, wow, why so hot? Why so much of that emotion? If you're interacting with someone who's effing annoying, and have you talked to them? Have you asked them repeatedly anything? Have you made your simple request, Dory? Because maybe their offensive behavior, if that's what's happening, maybe you just don't want to be around them. Maybe there's someone who you should just really limit your contact with. Make sense? I'm curious to know, though, have you talked about them? Or do you feel like when you're with them, you are triggered to a historical bunch of emotional shit that's just there that needs your attention? Is it a big thing, or are you just frustrated because you've had the same situation with them multiple times? So I want to make sure that we're being clear, you guys, on this, that being triggered when we're talking about historical things is one kind of trigger. Being mad because someone's a jerk, that's not being triggered. That's just being angry. That's normal. That's like regular life in real time. People are annoying, we get annoyed. Make sense? So then the question is, what do you do? Do you move on to the next step where you have the conversation? If you haven't had a hard conversation, please do. Make the simple request that they stop doing whatever it is that's making you crazy. See if that works. It may not. That was a great question, though, so thank you. Noelle said, when my husband glances at other women, I'm devastated and angry all at once. I'm pretty confident in myself. He's a wonderful man that treats me well. Not sure what triggers this. Okay, so that's a great example of, she's not saying that her husband's lecherous and that he's actually gawking and drooling over other women. Glancing, that's called being a human. I glance at women and I'm straight, right? So your description, I really appreciate your succinct description, Noelle, because that's different than someone who's gawking, right? Someone who, a glance at someone we're just humans being humans, right? So you're going to ask the 3 questions that we shared before. When you're in this dynamic with your husband and he glances at someone else, what does that remind you of? Did you have a father who had a wandering eye? Right? Did you see something? Was your mother very jealous? Was there some model of behavior that would make you feel threatened? Did you have other relationships in the past where the person tried to make you jealous by saying, oh, she's got a nice rack or whatever, right? Can you imagine? No. Bye. There's the door. Get out. But you know what I'm saying? So think about why you might have a sensitivity from past experiences in your own life, from any modeled behavior from someone else. When you're feeling that way, what does that remind you of? Because it may not be that your husband reminds you of someone necessarily, but your response of feeling very jealous, which it definitely is a trigger, right? That's the perfect description of what a trigger is. He's glancing at someone, not gaping, right? Not gawking. I mean, gaping, is that the right word? No, that's not the right word. Gawking. But her response is like, very hot. So I'm curious, if you're on here, let me know. Okay, we're moving on down. All right, Melanie said, you said once you realize you're being triggered, try to see where you feel that emotion in your body to be able to process it. What if we don't know how to do that? And I said, well, processing the emotion, the first thing is we have to identify it, right? We get curious of, oh, I'm having this feeling. And when you have a reaction, stop and think about it right now, Millie. You know where it is. Your throat? Do you get a headache? Do you feel a constriction in your chest? Anybody on here, tell me, when you get upset, when you get triggered, when you feel angry, where in your body do you feel it go? Just write it on down. Mine is my chest and my throat. It's like will close and I feel like I can't talk, but I have to cry. That can be how I feel. So the rest of you, do you see? You know where it is? Right. Neck, someone's saying. Stomach, yes, having like pains in your stomach. Headache, yep. Gut, I love it, yes. Yep. Got it. So we know. So that's the first thing to do. You ask the 3 Qs. So you ask the 3 questions, trying to understand what is the historical significance for this? Why is this familiar? Why is your body or the child within you feel like you're in this situation? Again, whatever the situation may be. We have to look at it with curiosity, right? Look at what is happening. Like, why? Why am I responding this way? Something is going on. And if you ask the 3 questions, you'll be able to identify any historical transference that you might be having in that situation. Your awareness is really the key, though. You have to want to know. And I think that sometimes it's so easy for us to say, it's just the other person. I'm not saying it's not the other person, right? With Dory's question, it could be the other person too. But your response is all you. So we have to decide, is my response in the present moment appropriate and this person's just an idiot and I shouldn't be interacting with them? That's possible, right? Or am I overreacting, not in a I'm judging it way, but in a real way, like my response is greater than the situation calls for. Why? Let me find out. I want to be curious. So there's that. I hope it was helpful. All right. Hi, Terry. How to trust when a boundary has been crossed or a trigger, if that makes sense. Well, a boundary has been crossed when you start to feel constricted. The moment you start to feel annoyed, either a boundary has been crossed or you have a fear that your need is not going to be met. Right? Think about it. You want to stop somewhere on the way home and you're in the car with a friend and your friend isn't saying she's not going to stop, but she's saying, I'm really exhausted. It's really been a long day. Can't wait to get home. So she's saying to you, she's not going to stop, but she's not saying it. You will start to feel like annoyed. Like, why can't you just stop? It's not going to kill her. In this can be how you know, sort of like you believe a need is not going to be met or a desire that you have is not going to come through for you. So I don't know if that was helpful, if that gave you an idea of how you know. Oh, some people said that they get a brain shutdown. That's interesting when you feel triggered. Yes, a lot of people, that's like fight, flight, freeze. That would be your brain freezes when you're feeling threatened in that moment. Okay. Someone said, so triggered by my brother saying hurtful things to me that he passes as a joke. Just passive aggressive. Humor is just passive aggressive rage. That's it. So No passing as a joke. I hate that. It can be passed off as nothing. No, don't let it be passed off as nothing. I'm just like, no, that passive aggressive bullshit. You got something to say to me? Open up your trap and say it with actual words. You're not getting away with being a coward and pretending it's a joke. You just want to put me down. You have some weird relationship with your anger. Fuck that. Pardon my French. Moving on. I hate it. Okay, but I know it's something. If I ask for a favor, he will surprisingly throw it in my face later on and pass it off as a joke. He always tries to one-up me when I'm saying a nice thing that happened during the day, like what I did was so bad. I don't understand why he tries to deflate me. Like what is happening? It hurts because I love him. How can I move past it and just shut him down without being hurtful myself? I need words that can honestly and kindly put him in his place and help me feel empowered, hopefully change the behavior dynamic. Part of it is you have to stop engaging in the dynamic. You have to. When he does a joke like that, say, you know what? That really hurts my feelings. And it's not funny. It's not funny. You one-upping me is not funny. I love you. I love our relationship. It's hurting my feelings. And so I'm not going to let you pass off your desire to like dig me for some reason. I'd rather you just tell me what you're mad about or something like that. I know that maybe those are hard words to say, but the thing is, you can't let it pass. The next time he does it, you can say, hey, you know what? Just putting you on notice, no more passive aggressive humor. It isn't funny. We're not kids. You're not teasing me. It's you being hostile and it hurts my feelings. So please stop. But if you don't, I'll hang up the phone. I'll get in my car. Like, I don't need it. I love you. I want a great relationship with you. This is not it. I hope that was helpful. All right, last question. Chelsea, when you become aware that your fear mind has been running the show, how can you take back the reins when you have built a lifetime of fear-based habits that have become your identity? Well, let's start with, Chelsea, that your fear-based habits are not your identity. They're just behavior. They're just habits. You can change them if you want to. So you might be identified with overgiving, overdoing, acquiescing to what other people need or want from you. That's not the same as those behaviors being your identity. Absolutely not. So decide that you are lovable the way that you are, that you are enough the way that you are, that give yourself the right to say no to people in a loving way. Listen, there is a cure for the disease to please. It's like 50% of what I teach and what I talk about. So how do you do it? Start by taking an inventory of all the shit you do that you don't want to do for people because you have the disease to please. Start there. I hope that was helpful. That was a great last question. Those of you who are seeing this after the fact, if it is on Facebook or in Instagram, just put, what are we putting in there? Oh, playback. So that I know, because I'll be checking and I'll still be answering questions. So if there's a bunch I didn't get to, I'm going to be going to all these posts and answering those questions as the day goes on. Thank you for being here with me. If you're on the business page, please share this. You can share the live right now with people if you think it might help them. That would be lovely. And I just want to say thank you for being with me. I'm so appreciate the fact that you guys care about your mental health. You know, that is my total trip, and it makes me so happy that there are other people who give a shit and want to have good lives. So yay. I will see you guys back here next Wednesday, 1 p.m. Same Terri time, same Terri channels. I will see you then. Thank you. And as always, what am I going to tell you? Take care of you. Yeah.